Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm Hari.
And I'm Kimmy. Today we're diving into a colossal chapter of human history, one that reshaped the map of the Middle Ages. We're talking about the Crusading movement.
When most people hear that term, they immediately picture knights in shining armor marching toward Jerusalem. But the reality is far more complex, encompassing centuries of religious, political, and military endeavor. It all officially kicked off in 1095 at the Council of Clermont.
Right. Pope Urban II proclaimed an armed expedition to support Eastern Christians under Muslim rule. But here is the fascinating twist. He didn't just call it a war, he framed it as a penitential pilgrimage. The theological groundwork had actually been laid long before, combining biblical precedents with classical just war theories stretching back to Augustine and, allegedly, Aristotle.
Augustine actually argued that the Bible's prohibition on killing didn't apply if a war had divine approval and was pursued for a just cause. So, the idea was that taking part would grant you absolution from sins, known as an indulgence. If you joined, you literally took the cross by sewing a fabric cross onto your garments. If you failed to fulfill the vow, you could face excommunication.
A pretty high-stakes wardrobe choice. To understand why this movement exploded, we have to look at the world stage. The Mediterranean was dominated by a tripartite order, a fragmented Western Europe, a weakened Byzantine Empire, and an ascendant Islamic world.
Interestingly, climate change played a massive role. Recurring droughts and cold waves in the east caused famines, while Western Europe experienced a warming period that fueled economic and population growth. The Pope saw a prime opportunity to unify the militant, aggressive knights of Europe under a single holy banner.
But going on a crusade was cripplingly expensive. We're talking about a knight spending over 4 years of their income just to fund the journey. People mortgaged inherited lands or sold civic privileges just for the cash to travel.
This led to massive innovations in finance and taxation. Have you heard of the Saladin tithe? It was a 10% levy on income and property introduced in 1188. Even the sale of indulgences became commercialized, later mass-produced on printing presses with blank spaces for people's names. Talk about a medieval money-making machine. But who were these people marching? It wasn't just aristocrats. Commoners made up a massive chunk of the movement. There was actually a People's Crusade in 1096, allegedly made up almost entirely of unarmed commoners led by charismatic figures like Peter the Hermit, though some sources suggest it included a significant number of minor nobles and well-trained knights.
Unfortunately, that mass enthusiasm had a very dark side. As these poorly organized waves moved across Europe, they unleashed unspeakable tragedies. The Rhineland massacres during the First Crusade were horrific, organized pogroms against Jewish communities.
It is a grim reality we absolutely cannot gloss over. The Crusaders' violence was often absolute. When they breached Jerusalem in 1099, they massacred the inhabitants. And the violence wasn't restricted to the Middle East. They targeted fellow Christians, like the Cathar heretics in the Albigensian Crusade in southern France.
Exactly, and the scope kept expanding. The Pope essentially handed out crusade status for multiple theaters of war. Pope Urban urged Catalan nobles to stay in Iberia and fight the Moors, promising the same spiritual rewards. Then there were the Northern Crusades, led by warrior monks like the Teutonic Knights, who built massive brick castles and forcibly converted or eliminated local pagan tribes in the Baltic regions.
The Crusading movement essentially birthed those famous military orders we see in movies, the Templars, the Hospitallers, and the Teutonic Knights. It even turned into a political weapon. Popes launched political crusades against their own Christian rivals, like Emperor Frederick II. During the Western Schism, rival popes were literally calling crusades against each other's supporters.
That is peak medieval drama right there. But returning to the societies they built, a lesser-known fact is the heavy involvement of women. Though popes officially discouraged them, women were vital. They served as washerwomen, who actually received special papal approval to accompany armies, and even as proxy rulers at home.
Oh, it goes way beyond support roles. Because of the high mortality rates for men in the Crusader states, women frequently inherited fiefs and thrones. Between 1186 and 1228, 4 queens actually ruled Jerusalem.
And in Frankish Greece, wives of captured barons formed the Parliament of Dames in 1261 to negotiate peace. That is incredibly fascinating.
It really is. We also saw massive cultural exchanges. While the wars were undeniably brutal, they also resulted in multi-ethnic societies, where Western, Byzantine, and Islamic styles blended. The Crusaders developed what historians call the architecture of fear, featuring heavy timber bolts and iron-barred windows for their massive forts.
The literary output was massive, too. From epic old French poems like the Song of Antioch to heartbreaking laments written by Jewish and Muslim scholars. Even today, the legacy of the Crusades is highly controversial, often invoked symbolically in modern geopolitics.
It reshaped taxation, fueled urbanization, and helped establish early modern nation-states by drawing militant lords away from Europe. It truly is a colossal, multi-layered era.
That wraps up our deep dive into the crusading movement. Thank you so much for joining us on this historical journey, everyone. We hope you learned something new.
Stay curious, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
This episode is based on the Wikipedia article Crusading Movement, which is available under the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license. This podcast was crafted using artificial intelligence.